So speaking of Donald Trump, we had a omnibus bill go through Congress the other day that was signed into law by the Honorable Donald Trump. A lot of people thought he was going to veto this thing. No such luck.
Calling him that now?
Well, see, when you're in the military, you have to refer to the president as the Honorable.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
The Honorable Donald J. Trump. That's how you, if you were actually the president was in your uniform, that's how you're officially supposed to reply.
I don't recall any of that.
Oh,
sounds like some Air Force.
They wouldn't expect the Army to remember that because you guys can't remember much. But yeah, another $1 trillion of debt, another 2,000 pages worth of bill that were given to members of Congress 18 hours before they had to vote on it. Another,
which, to be fair, did give us the most epic tweet storm from Rand Paul.
Oh my God,
that was fantastic.
His Twitter game is always so on point.
That was so good when he live tweeted reading that thing. That was pretty great.
I think this definitely puts him in the good Rand category.
Yeah,
I mean that Rand Paul isn't always the perfect libertarian.
Well, sometimes he is a Republican. He has to play Republican, or else he will lose that seat.
But when Rand Paul is good, he is really good, and he was really good the other night. And we talked. There was a bill that went through Congress not too long ago that also raised spending. I mean, this is why I always say that so long as the Republican Party is married to the military, is intent upon giving the military as much funding as it can possibly get, they will never be a party of fiscal responsibility. Never. Because every time they want to raise spending for the military, which they always want to do, they always have to make some idiot concession to the Democrats, and that just doubles down on the spending increase.
And they gave Democrats things that, like, they gave so much more than they got. And for the president that's supposed to be the negotiator, this was like, Democrats are going out there saying, yeah, we got like 85% of what we wanted. The minority party got 85%?
Yeah, the people without the House, the Senate, or the White House. They're getting everything.
And the majority party got, what, 30? If they were lucky? And the 30 they got was actually just crap that the rest of us didn't want anyway? Come on.
Well, they got the $700 billion they needed for the military.
Oh, my God. And listening, I love Ben Shapiro. But when he starts talking about we need more money for the military, like, I know you're smarter than that.
Oh, I know
that you're smarter than that, Ben. What is wrong with you?
I enjoy his podcast too, and it's funny because I knew this was coming up, right? So when he was going to talk about, I knew he was going to talk about this bill, and I knew that when they were going to start talking about it, he was going to do as Shapiro does, which is favor his, for all that we know at this point, it is a never-ending military budget. That's when Ben draws the line, is never. Right? And he did just as you thought he was going to do. He starts talking about it, and he's like, "This bill is terrible, but let me talk about how great $700 billion for the military is. We needed that." And it's just like, Ben, you got to stop.
We
just
really
think that
needed
someone
that.
who is so into politics would look into how much money that the military wastes. Like, and we saw it firsthand. So maybe it's just inside baseball for us, but like, it's not hard to see just how much crap they waste money on. You could cut that budget in half, and with proper oversight, troops could get bigger raises and more equipment, but you have to cut administration costs.
It's been funny here to see some of the more liberty Republicans excuse our Congressman Don Bacon voting for that thing. Because Don Bacon he's a former general. He was commander at Offutt Air Force Base right down the road from here. He's a military guy. He's married to the military-industrial complex. Yep. So he's one of the dudes responsible for getting all that military spending in that bill. So thank you, Mr. Don Bacon, for that.
So one thing I do kind of want to point out, this is called like a Republican bill a lot. And so they're in power. So that's fair to a certain extent. But There were a lot of Republicans that didn't support it and a lot of Democrats that did. This was truly a bipartisan anal fisting that we just got.
Oh yeah, no, this bill is all of the reasons that current libertarians are what they are. This is the reason that people are like telling everyone that it's just the same now, because this is what it is, right? Yeah, I mean, like, because when you go out and you campaign, when they go out and they campaign, that's when they are going to be representing what they're supposed to be representing. When they're standing in front of a podium and they're trying to get support, that's when they're going to talk about how fiscally conservative they are, or how much their priorities align with what the Republican or Democrat priorities are supposed to align with. And then they get into a room with other people in Washington and it's just all the same thing. And it's all just a bunch of people arguing about things, and it's gotten to the point where no one can agree on anything at all anymore whatsoever. No one can make compromises. No one can make cuts. So the end result is a 2,000+ page bill that's just bursting with hemorrhaging debt, because that's how we solve things now, is we just give everyone everything they want so we can, just for the sake of progress.
Yeah. What's that old Tom Woods line that we have a stupid party and an evil party, and every once in a while they get together and give us a bill that's both stupid and evil? That's what this thing is.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, Woods is good. My favorite one is no matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is absolutely true.
I love that one. And it's funny because the first time I heard it, I was like, well, not necessarily. And you're like, yeah, no, it's every time. Just John McCain.
I hate that man so much.
Yeah, so
that dude's a traitor. I'm sorry. Look.
Oh, nothing was better than him just right in front of McConnell for the healthcare thing. Oh my God, it was quite dramatic.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it makes me laugh every time him and his family go after Rand Paul. Like, Rand Paul sympathizes with the terrorists. Like, what? Excuse me? Rand Paul sympathizes with the terrorists. Like, really? Now that's a bit of a stretch.
I'm gonna go kill that dog.
Oh, go ahead, do that. Yeah,
why did they say that? Because he's against torture?
Yeah, because he. I can't remember the specific. Oh no, he was opposing. Who was it? John Bolton being nominated for security advisor. That's another
right. Which I don't know why anyone would be concerned with the idea that we just threw a bunch of money at the military and grabbed a war hawk for that position. That's it's bothersome. I don't think it makes Rand favor terrorists because he's worried about that dangerous recipe there.
No, and if anything, it means that Rand sympathizes with logic, with reason.
Sure, liberty.
Sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, if you're still if you're in 2018 and you still think the Iraq War was a good idea, your opinion doesn't matter for anything.
You might be John Bolton, our new Secretary of.
Yeah, you just missed it. We were just talking about that.
I thought we were still talking about McCain. Sorry.
I mean, are they really different people? I've never seen them in the same room together.
No, there's a difference. Credit where it's due. Bolton's mustache game is on point.
This is true. And he doesn't have that weird, I don't know what the deal is exactly, if he's like hoarding golf balls in his cheek or something, but McCain's got that thing going on. Bolton doesn't seem to.
And John McCain had been captured. Okay, I prefer people who weren't captured.
Oh yeah, he said that, didn't he?
Yeah, he really did.
Oh my God.
That's probably why he got that no vote on that bill. Because McCain's like, yeah, I'll show you who got captured.
Yeah.
Your bill.
It's bad. And look, I don't know the process of how those things get written up, but goodness gracious, that's too much. It's too much. We shouldn't have 2,000+ pages of policy that spends a whole bunch of money and puts us in more. It's insane. Yeah. It's completely insane. It doesn't do any good to lower taxes when you're doing stuff like that. There is absolutely no importance put on regulating any kind of spending. So,
absolutely.
Balls to the wall.
It's so frustrating. I mean, I'm starting to see a little bit of a tide change here because there is a
Tide Pod change.
A what?
We're getting a Tide Pod change.
A Tide Pod change.
Yeah.
Maybe. maybe that's the problem. Everyone's eating Tide Pods and it's rotting their brains from the inside. Maybe if we just banned Tide Pods.
They're trying to, aren't they?
Some areas are, yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's just
Yeah,
dumb.
we got our buddies at they were on the page Sarcasm and Liberty. They were trying to get I guess there were some legislators trying to push something that was going to force Tide to change the way that they produce the pods to make them look less appealing. And
that's the reason people are eating them, because they look
right.
like candy. What are we all, 5-year-olds?
Sarcasm and Liberty were like, debate me, please. Like, debate me right now, because this is terrible policy. I don't know if they ever did it. You should go check out.
Man, how insulting to millennials that they think that they're eating Tide Pods because they look like candy. I mean, that's something that my 2-year-old might do.
Well, I think when you're eating Tide Pods, it's kind of fair game, right? As far as insults go. You probably have done a lot to keep yourself away from the ability to not have ridicule.
Just let nature take its toll. Just let the kids eat their Tide Pods and let whatever happens happen. Live and let live, and live and let eat Tide Pods, whatever the case may be.
Well,
So we wanted to get into one more subject here. We wanted to get into a little bit of tariff talk.
Oh boy, yeah.
Ooh, yes.
Tariffs.
And it always amazes me, especially coming from Republicans, because this is one of those things where it's so blatantly obvious how terrible tariffs are that it doesn't even seem like something you need to debate. I mean, every free market economist, from Adams to Mises, from Hazlitt to Sol, agrees that tariffs are terrible. Like, every single one. There is no major school of economics that says that tariffs are a good idea. And yet, liberty Republicans all across this country are jumping up and down and praising these tariffs as if there's some kind of magic pill that's going to save us from China and Mexico and Canada and all these boogeymen that are all out to get us.
That about sums it up.
So I'll make the devil's advocate argument, and I don't think it's a particularly good one. I don't think it's a good one, but if the attempt is to force some of these countries back to the negotiating table so that they have to lower some of their tariffs to get ours back down, it can be seen as a victory. But I don't trust anyone in our government to actually have the fortitude to pull that off, or the intelligence to make that deal. So,
see, the problem with that argument is it requires you to believe that Donald Trump doesn't actually think tariffs are a good idea.
Oh yeah,
right.
Obviously, like I said, it's not a great argument.
Right. Well, I mean, look, there is a devil's argument to be made here, if we're being honest, and to be completely fair, right? I mean, look, there's so much involved in all of this. I mean, I'm sure if we, as in the people here, on this stream, tried to pick it apart and figure out everything going on and all the reasons that the U.S. might be frustrated with China to place the tariffs in the first place, there'd be a lot to peel back. I mean, there's so much stuff going on when you talk about these IP laws, and then you've got the government of China subsidizing the industry out there. So they're able to work on these levels where they don't have to pay as much. And people say, well, how are you supposed to compete with that? And I mean, that's why we're libertarians, right? I don't want to. That's not what we're into. We're not into to tinker until we find some solution. This is all a mess, right? You're just going to put more state in place to take care of problems that come from having a bunch of state control. That's completely counterproductive to me, and I'm sure to you and to most everyone else that has any kind of mind for economics and considers himself a libertarian. And that's the reason it is, right? It's because it's just a tax. Right, the consumers of the country are the first ones to suffer from it, right? And so if China puts a tariff on products, the first people that are going to suffer for it are the Chinese people. And when you put a tariff on American products, the people that suffer from the most are American people, except for the ones in that industry, right? And I don't know the answer. So people come to me well, what are you supposed to do? I don't know. I'm not in the government. I'm not a piece of that machine, and I don't like any of it. I don't support any of it. I think it's all a bunch of nonsense. But the one thing I don't support is just doubling down, right? And then just doing the same thing that got you there, thinking that sooner or later someone's just going to back up and go, okay, we're done. That was fun. We're done. You got us. We're going to stop now. So I don't know. I don't know what it is to fix it. And there are plenty of arguments to be made when people are like, yeah, no, this is good, but it's not good. It's not good for the economy. The people pay the price. It's just going to equal out to higher price products. And
it always hits poor people the most. Like, if you're going to, like that, I don't forget what his name was, but that douchebag that's holding up the Campbell's can, like, well, you know, it's not a big deal if you have to pay 3 or 4 cents more per can. Look, man, I've been poor enough to remember when that would have been a big deal. Like,
well, that's but okay. First of all, that's just terrible logic.
Yeah.
Like, is that where we're at now? Is that where we're at? Was we're just trying to find ways to justify any kind of like incremental, like just, you know, it's whatever. It's 3 cents. It's not the end of the world. That's not where I want to be arguing from.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the position I want to take.
Yeah, it always frustrates me to see these people like, man, I would pay more for an American product. Like, okay, do it then. Pay more for the American product. I guarantee right now, when you go to the store, you're not looking for where the items you purchase are made. You're just buying the best product at the cheapest price, which is what everybody's doing. What every good consumer does.
4 plastic plates for 88 cents.
How dare you? You must.
I guarantee that wasn't made in America.
That is fantastic. Yeah, neither is anything that Trump sells, by the way.
Right.
So, you know.
That's different, though. I mean,
does Trump sell anything, or does he just attach his name to things? I don't think he's ever successfully sold things very well. He's not a businessman. He's a real estate mogul, and that is a different animal. That's what a lot of people think. He's like some genius business guy. He played a corrupt system and came out ahead. It wasn't business. He's not good at selling things to people.
Dude, didn't you see him on The Apprentice, though? That man is a genius.
He can sell himself really well.
And that's what he does.
Yeah, so that's it.
He's a good TV personality, and he very well may be good at business. I don't know. I don't know enough about all of the stuff he's done. I do know that you can read information about like some of the people that he's dealt with in his educational past. And there's like people on from the schools he's went to. I remember reading something where like an old professor of his was like, no, that guy is probably the biggest idiot I've ever met in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whenever I tried to like press him to focus more and to kind of show him the right aspect that we were coming from, he just got defensive and told me I was an idiot.
Yeah, you're right, Zach. Most of that stuff that has Trump on the name, he just sells his name to people and gets a royalty from it. But I mean,
there is a certain level of genius in playing the system like that.
Oh yeah,
but
it's
a
genius.
Dirty genius.
I mean, the thing is, though, if he had any sort of principles or integrity, he would only let people do that if they were making their products in America. Like, yeah, sure, he doesn't necessarily make the products, but if he was really all about this made in America nonsense he's always talking about, then he would only sell his brand to people who make their products in America. And the fact that he doesn't shows me his preferred preference.
Right. Well, it's because Donald Trump doesn't have any principles.
No.
You know, Donald Trump is just going to...
The only principles he may have are bad ones. It's protection.
Well, his principles are profit, right?
Principles are like protectionism. That I would say that is a principle for him.
Sure.
It's just a terrible principle.
Oh, it's bad. It's really bad because what we're seeing right now is like just pure corporatism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's just going to get bad because that's Trump, right? Like if Trump was like a professional wrestler, his name would be the corporatist.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, he was a professional wrestler, remember?
Oh, well, he was featured, right? Was he a regular?
If you're on WWE, you're a pro. It's over. That's the big time.
All right, I guess I can't argue with that. But you know what I mean, though, right? Like this is crony capitalism at its finest, and it's like it's tough because for me, I love me some deregulation, right? Cannot state that enough. But then it's only so these corporations can go and just do like the most unethical shit in the world and get away with it, right? Like, who are we kidding? This is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He's not doing it because he agrees with the principles of a free market, else he wouldn't have a hard-on for tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
He's just doing it because he wants to be able to give this political privilege to corporations so he can just do the Trump thing. right? He just wants to just corporatists all over the place. So that's what bothers me about it. I'm okay with the deregulation, but
I mean,
you wish that there was some good reasoning behind it.
I mean, the thing about tariffs is superficially they make sense. Now, you can see how somebody who doesn't get into the weeds in economics, like some of us libertarians like to, might think that a tariff is a good idea. It does make superficial sense. It's when you get a little bit deeper into things that you see how illogical they are. Like, say, for instance, you mentioned earlier about foreign companies subsidizing their industries. And for the longest time, I thought that was a great argument. I would think, well, yeah, how about they're dumping their products here? That's not fair. Right. I mean, yeah, it's not fair. For the country that's getting subsidized, it's completely
that's
unfair
awesome
for them.
For us. We're getting cheap, hopefully well-made products.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is when a country subsidizes it, let's say China subsidizing steel, what they're doing is taxing their own people. They're taking money away from their people so that we in America can save money.
Right.
That is totally unfair to Chinese people. Mm-hmm. And we're reaping the benefits because you know what? All those new buildings going up everywhere, all those new cars that are being built, all those trucks, all those factories, those are being built cheaper than they otherwise would have been. Yep. So it's another country subsidizing their industry. That's bad for the industry that they're subsidizing here in the United States. Like China subsidizing steel is bad for steel industry here, but that's good for every industry here that is using steel to make products.
And the thing is, our steel industry was growing.
Yeah.
It's not like it was. Go ahead. You probably know more about this than I do.
Well, I don't know a ton about it. I was super interested in it. I loathe tariffs. So I looked into it a little bit. I didn't want to be making all these arguments without knowing anything about it. So I did look into it. Now I don't know how they, as in the steel industry, has been doing like historically, but I know for 2017, for all the quarters of the year, it was year-over-year revenue gains. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it was before that, but I know that the steel industry had a profitable 2017.
Yeah, and the reason that most steel jobs are going away is because of automation.
Yeah, technology.
Mm-hmm. Like most of the process in making steel is automated now. That's why you need less jobs to produce steel.
They were talking about they're going to add 5,000 new steel jobs at the cost of how many jobs in other sectors?
Mm-hmm. How many?
Tens of thousands, realistically.
I mean, I'm always hearing commercials on the radio, right, about how cheap a steel building is. You know, build your church using steel. Mm-hmm. Do your new project with steel. This and that.
I mean, most of the church building that I've ever been a part of was we're going to buy a steel building and lay it, and we'll be ready to go in 4 weeks, and it'll be half the price. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great deal.
So what you're doing is all those companies putting up steel buildings, you're raising their price of production. Now maybe it's not. Now maybe that church that may have been built with the cheap price of steel. Now maybe it doesn't get built. Now maybe it's too expensive to make that steel church. And those people who were, building that church, now they're out of work. Now there's not as much work going around.
This is absolutely true, and someone just left a comment, and this is true, right? So all of this, totally valid, totally true. And that's before you even consider retaliation. And so that's one of the biggest things with tariffs, right? Is because sure, it's easy enough to look on the face of a tariff and say, look, hey, you're going to pay a little bit more for this product, but you're helping American jobs, my jobs, But it completely, like that thing in a vacuum, sure, I can understand your argument. I don't agree with it, but it completely ignores all the other consequences that come from things like trade wars. And then just like, Patrick is saying here in the comments, China's threatening a 25% tariff on pork. And that's not just it. They're also talking about hitting soybeans. So a bunch of agricultural stuff. Yeah. Now I know.
So our area gets bent over because that is a big part of our trade here. Yep. That's going to hurt. Iowa does a lot of pork. Nebraska does a lot of soy. Kansas does the most soy. They're going to get slammed.
See, and we don't have any steel manufacturers in Nebraska.
So, thanks.
So we're not benefiting from any of this.
So you know what's funny about this? When you look at it, it doesn't. So it's funny, and it's funny. I am interested in seeing how the Trump supporters are going to argue about this and how they're going to defend it, right? Because everyone that supports Trump, like we just put up a meme on the Think Liberty page, which is totally funny because it says Trump like it's a campaign sign. And then the slogan is what he meant was ... Because that's pretty much what it is at this point, is just all the Trump supporters are telling us what he really meant. Oh no, that's not what he meant. What he actually meant, right? Because he's always playing 4D chess apparently at this point.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about watching the Trump supporters, or I'm anticipating it about watching them, support this after the China kickback, is because you do have this thing. So our tariffs hit like 60 billion and their tariffs only hit 3 billion, but it's all agricultural. And like you guys just said, it directly hits Trump's base. It directly hits Trump's base. So yes, it's a smaller percentage, but China, as it's a very nefarious, devious move they made, because even though it's a much smaller amount, it hits Trump right in the spot where he probably didn't want to get hit with a trade war.
Yeah, it hits the United States in one of its most important industries, because farming is huge for a huge amount of states. I mean, here in Nebraska, it's the biggest thing there is. All across the Great Plains states, that's the biggest thing. In the South, that's one of the biggest things there is agriculture, is food. I mean, the United States is one of the four most fertile farmlands in the entire world. And we're the only country that has the economic system capable of actually taking advantage of that, because the other ones are Russia. They've never been able to take advantage of that because of decades and decades of communism. China, again, same problem. Brazil, which is going through a socialist phase. So the United States has the best economic system with the best farmland that is. And that's one of the reasons we've been able to grow food at such an enormous rate and sell it to the rest of the world. So yeah, China putting a huge tariff on our food is a big deal in retaliation to these stupid steel tariffs. Because they're like, oh look, they're building 500 new jobs. Oh, that's great, Mr. Steel in Pennsylvania. What about all those? What about all these hardcore MAGA 4D chess voters out here in the Great Plains? If these tariffs go through and they're allowed to play out the way I think that Trump wants them to, and we start seeing the negative effects of it, I'm very interested to see what all these heartland voters are going to make of Donald Trump. And I'm really hoping that the Libertarian Party in 2020 runs a really good candidate like a Larry Sharp, for example, who can just take advantage of that.
They're not going to.
I don't know. I don't think we're going to get welled. I really don't think that's going to go.
Time will tell. I think they're going to push for it, at least. I mean, who knows how it's going to end out, right? There's a lot of different people in the Libertarian Party that think a lot of different things.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, though...
So the good news about all of this is at least we're kind of getting Stefan Molyneux back. Like, he's kind of coming off that train. Dude was livid.
He just uploaded a picture of a black pill to Twitter. Here's it. Nice to have you back, Stefan.
I don't know what he thought was going to happen. Like, come on, dude, this is Trump.
It was the first time he ever got involved in politics, and he wanted to believe in something. Because, look, that dude, if you look at that dude, he has been going through such a crisis as an atheist. Like, he has been having a crisis about not having faith, if you watch his videos, because I still watch his stuff.
I listen to his podcast sometimes.
If you listen to him, like, he is having an existential crisis, and he put all of that into like this, like, I'm not an evangelical Christian, but I'm going to mask all of their values and vote for Trump. Like, that was his world. That was how he was getting through this crisis of faith he was having, or lack of faith, I guess. So that's just me, kind of like my 5-cent psychologist.
See, I don't see how you could look at Donald Trump before the election and think that he had any sort of principles. I don't see how you could think that.
I think people deluded themselves because he was so different.
I mean,
like, he's not policy-wise, he's not different, but the way he speaks is different. So people thought that mattered.
I mean,
well, it doesn't.
During the election, I think it was Joe Biden, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Joe Biden who was asked who he'd prefer, Trump or Cruz, and he said Trump, because he said Trump is malleable, whereas Cruz is principled. You know, I don't always agree with Cruz's principles, but I can agree with that. He tends to be more principled than most politicians, whether you agree with those principles or not. Trump, I don't think that he has a single principle to his name. He is
Winning.
malleable. Winning. Yeah, his principle is winning.
Yeah.
I mean, he does that.
Look, there's a lot of Republicans that are about that. Republicans. There are a lot of Democrats about that, too. Freak, there's some libertarians about that. I don't get that at all. We don't win anything. What are you going on about?
Well, what's frustrating about this, and he's not the only one, and it's this whole thing to where it's like philosophy is just not there anymore.
Mhm.
And it's really terrible because what we're going back to is like kind of the exact thing that like people, I mean, look, Hayek wrote the book about the fatal conceit, which is, I mean, essentially about this, and it's where people are headed now again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bothersome that it's gotten trendy again, which is just thinking that you're so intelligent that you don't need to have principles. People just need to be as smart as you are, and then you can have like all the answers to anything. Right. And it's just this idea that there's a subset of people who just know more than anybody else, and they're the ones that need to be in charge of completely engineering society. And you're seeing this kind of rhetoric come out with these kids in Parkland, and just the way that people talk about this stuff. It's just, we just need common sense gun control. That's it. Like, there's some magic bullet. Like, there's some list of shit out there that someone can put together, and it's going to be like, oh, that's what it was.
It's just common sense.
No way I didn't. Right. That's right there. I don't know what I was thinking. Right. No one has ever figured this out, and anyone that's ever tried has failed. But you guys clearly know what's going on. We just need to give you people that are really confident and super ignorant, complete control of everything, and just all the problems are going to go away in the world.
I mean, what's
the new philosophy?
What's that saying about something being so stupid that only an idiot or an intellectual can believe in it? Yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about. That's what communism is. Something so stupid, only an idiot or an intellectual can possibly think it's a good idea.
Yeah, well, it's because these hyper intellectuals get so stuck in the fact of how intellectual they are that they trick themselves into thinking that they could be smart enough to engineer society, and no one is.
So I think the problem that a lot of people that are really smart get into is
they think
no one is really smart in everything. That person doesn't exist.
Sure.
You can be really smart in a couple of things. Like Ben Carson is possibly I'll say it, the most gifted surgeon in the world, bar none. Dude separated Siamese twins at the brain. That he gets the award. No one else can claim it.
Yeah, I can't do that.
He can't run the HUD. It's a different thing. Well, I mean, just because he's smart doesn't mean that his smarts is going to translate into a different area that he's not a specialist in.
To be fair, no one should run the HUD.
Right, I get that. But, like you
wouldn't to nominate nobody.
You wouldn't trust him to plan like a military strategy or even an economic strategy because like human brains don't work that way. The reason capitalism works is because humans are specialists. And we talk about specialization all the time. It's because that is how our brains operate. We get really good at a couple things. Or some of us don't get very good at anything, but whatever. We're just consumers at that point, I guess.
No, that's the libertarians.
We're not really good at anything.
The word you're looking for.
We're really good at reading economics and talking about politics, and then everything else we're just like, yeah.
No, I mean that's absolutely true, right? And just assuming what specialists do that are in the fit like the mastery portion of their knowledge it's foolish. And there's people walking around all over the place, doing it on all kinds of things and everywhere.
I mean, you're out in the West Coast, correct? I mean, that's
unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even want to imagine the level of smugness.
The smug clouds.
The smug clouds. Do they really sniff their own farts like South Park says they do?
No, I mean, look, it depends where you're going. So,
this implying that in some places they do.
No, man, look, the South Park episode wasn't far off if you're going to head up to the peninsula, right? And so if you go, it's everything around here in the Bay Area, because I live like right, and I'm about 20, 30 minutes away from Berkeley.
Oh, God. You're the center of stupid.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I have an aura of free market capitalism that I have to put on before I leave the house to make sure I don't get absorbed by social justice. But I mean, it's rough. There's some places you go and it's just whatever. There's some places so there's it's called the BART line. So it's a Bay Area Rapid Transit. It's a public transit system. It's like a rail train.
Mhm.
And everything along that line is basically South Park. I feel bad saying there's going to be a bunch of people like, that's totally not true. But this is where you have all the high housing costs and stuff like that, and all the way up to the peninsula. And it gets worse and worse and worse the closer to the peninsula you get. And then by the time you get to the peninsula, everyone is in fact driving Priuses and smelling their own farts.
That's great. You see, I'm just a country bumpkin. I've lived my entire life in Nebraska, in northern Florida, with a short stint overseas in the military. So
I'm actually well traveled.